I'm not the pretty bride you ordered." Etta Braddock said it before the stage dust had settled around her boots. September 23, 1886, had been warm for Colorado, but the late afternoon wind carried the first hard edge of autumn through Redwater's single business street. Men at the hitching rail stopped talking. A woman outside the general store lowered a parcel without seeming to notice. The stage driver stood with both hands on Etta's small travel trunk, waiting to learn whether he should set it down or load it again. Etta kept her worn valise beside her skirt. Across the street, Silas Whitcomb held a tintype in one hand. The woman in it had Lila's soft mouth, Lila's bright eyes, and the smooth confidence of someone who had never needed to apologize for being seen. Silas looked from the picture to Etta. He was broader than she had imagined from his letters, dressed in a dark coat, his hat shadowing a face made still by surprise. He did not glance behind her for a second passenger. "Your name?" he asked. "Etta Braddock, the name on the letters." "Yes." The stage driver eased the trunk to the ground. Its iron corner struck the dirt with a dull knock. That sound made the moment final. Etta could still have claimed a mistake. Still have said the pictured woman was delayed in Pueblo. Instead, she lifted the blue thread packet she had held through 3 nights of rail travel and a jolting stage ride south from Pueblo. "I wrote to you." Silas's gaze dropped to the packet. "All of them?" "7 letters from me. These are the copies I kept. Your 7 are folded with them. 14 pieces of paper. 6 months of questions, arguments, weather reports, cattle troubles, and private hopes neither of them had trusted to anyone nearby." Silas did not reach for them. "Whose picture is that?" "My cousin Lila's." A murmur moved along the boardwalk. Etta heard the word cousin repeated by someone who had no right to it. Near the livery, a lean man in a dust-colored coat watched with his thumbs hooked through his belt. She recognized him from Silas's letters before Silas named him. Calder Voss, foreman at Juniper Draw, trusted by Silas's father, trusted perhaps by Silas. Calder's eyes went first to the tintype, then to the packet, then to Etta's trunk. He was already measuring which fact might become useful. "Does Lila know her photograph was sent?" Silas asked. "Yes." "Did she intend to come?" "She liked the idea before it required a train." The truth drew a few low laughs. Etta kept her shoulders square. "When your fare arrived, she refused. I came because you were waiting for the woman who wrote the letters, and no other woman was coming." Silas's jaw tightened. "You accepted money sent after I saw this face?" "Yes." "Knowing I believed it was yours?" "Yes." Each answer cost less than the first and more than the one before it. He looked at the tintype again. Etta waited for disgust, anger, or the sort of politeness that would end with her trunk placed back on the stage. Instead, Silas turned to the men near the hitching rail. "Find another subject." No one moved. Calder stepped closer. "Silas, this is a costly misunderstanding." "I did not ask you." The foreman's mouth flattened. Silas handed him the horse's reins without taking his attention from Etta. "See to the team." Calder accepted them, but his gaze lingered on the blue thread. "And the trunk?" the driver asked. Silas looked at Etta. "Do you want it carried to Mrs. Fielding's boarding house while we speak?" Not to his ranch, not to his house. He had given her a destination with witnesses and a question she could refuse. "Yes," Etta said. Only then did he lift the trunk. He did not touch her arm or take the valise from her without asking. When he nodded toward it, she said, "I will carry this one." "All right." They crossed Redwater with several townspeople pretending not to follow. Silas walked half a pace ahead because of the trunk's weight, then slowed whenever the uneven boards forced Etta to mind her hem. Calder led the horses toward the livery, but once Etta looked back and found him watching them instead of the team. Agnes Fielding opened the boarding house door before Silas knocked. She was a square-built woman with iron-gray hair and an apron dusted in flour. Her eyes passed over Etta's travel-stained cloak, the trunk, Silas's closed expression, and the tintype still in his hand. "My parlor is not a courtroom," Agnes said. "Anyone wishing to make it one can rent the room by the hour." "We need privacy," Silas said. "Then you will have it." Agnes stepped aside. Silas set the trunk near the parlor wall where Etta could see it. He placed the tintype face down on the small table between 2 chairs. Etta kept the valise beside her ankle and remained standing until he took the chair farthest from the door. leaving her the one with the clearest path out. Agnes shut the parlor doors and used her voice in the front hall to scatter listeners. Coffee will come when Miss Braddock asks for it. The use of her name struck Etta harder than kindness should have. Silas held out his hand toward the packet, palm open. "May I?" Etta loosened her grip but did not give it to him yet. "Before you read, you should know my mother believed my words were good enough to keep a man interested, but my face was not good enough to make him send the fare." My aunt agreed. Lila agreed to the picture. I agreed to keep writing after it was sent. Why? Because you kept answering. He absorbed that without rescuing her from it. Did anyone else write a line? No. Did anyone tell you what to say? No. Then give me the letters. Etta placed the packet in his hand. Their fingers did not touch. Silas weighed the papers as if truth might have a measurable heft. "In my last letter," she said, "I wrote that home is where the truth can be told and still be asked to stay." His eyes lifted to hers. The room held no promise, only the possibility of one. Etta had expected a verdict before sunset. What he offered instead was time, which frightened her more, because time could gather evidence for mercy or refusal. Neither would be borrowed. "Then I'll hear it from you," he said, "not from them." Silas did not untie the blue thread. He set the packet beside the face-down tintype and took the chair opposite Etta, leaving the table between them. Outside the parlor doors, Agnes Fielding informed someone that Coffee did not purchase the right to listen at keyholes. A pair of boots retreated down the hall. Etta kept one hand on the worn valise beside her ankle. The small travel trunk remained against the wall where Silas had placed it. "Start with the photograph," he said. She had rehearsed the truth through 3 nights on the train, but none of the versions had prepared her for a man who listened without offering escape. "My mother found your notice in a farm paper. She said correspondence might be the one sensible road left to me." Did you believe her? I believed writing to a stranger might be safer than marrying a man I already knew. One corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile. "That sounds like something from your second letter." It was, he remembered. The fact unsettled her more than anger would have. "The first letters went under my own name. Then you asked whether I had a likeness. I said you needn't send one. My mother called that politeness. She said a man would not cross a room for my face, much less send fare across 2 states. Silas's gaze remained on Etta, not the tintype. "Whose idea was Lila?" "My mother's," my aunt agreed. Lila enjoyed the thought while it was only a story. A ranch. A man who owned land. "And you?" "But I refused was sent." "Yes." The word tasted no cleaner, for being honest. "Afterward, you wrote back. You asked about the dry goods accounts, about debt, about what made a house feel safe. No one had ever asked me such things as though the answers carried weight. So you kept writing." "Yes, until the fare came." Etta lifted her chin. "Until I learned Lila would not travel. Then I understood you might wait in Redwater for a woman who had never written you a single line." Silas looked down at the packet. "Why come yourself instead of sending word? A letter would have reached you too late. A telegram from Pueblo might have done the same, and the fare was sent for the writer. After I saw another woman's face." "Yes." He sat back. The boards beneath his boots gave a faint complaint. "You do not ask me to excuse it. No, or to pretend I was not deceived. No, good." The word held no cruelty, only a boundary. Agnes entered carrying coffee and bread. She placed the tray between them and glanced at the face-down tintype without touching it. "Miss Braddock will have the room tonight," she said. "The door locks. I keep the second key. That is settled." Etta looked at her. "Thank you. Names are free," Agnes replied. "People should use the right ones." She poured coffee, then left the doors open by an inch, enough to keep propriety without surrendering privacy. Silas reached toward the packet, but stopped before touching it. "May I read one?" Etta untied the thread herself. She chose the 4th copy, written before Lila's tintype had been sent. It contained her argument that debt should be recorded plainly because shame already charged interest. She handed it across the table. Their fingertips met along the fold. Warm skin, dry paper. Silas was released first, yet Etta delayed withdrawing her hand by one breath before letting the page lie between them. He read without hurry. She knew each sentence, including the line where she had admitted that useful work sometimes felt like the only beauty no one could take away. When he finished, he folded the letter along its old crease. You kept books for your father? 7 years. Purchases, freight, credit, inventory. Could you read a cattle ledger? I could read the figures. The cattle would require instruction. Silas returned the letter. Their fingers brushed again, lighter than before. He did not hold on. Juniper Draw's accounts are behind, he said. How far? Far enough that the bank balance and the cattle count do not agree as closely as they should. Do you suspect theft? I suspect poor records. I have not earned the right to accuse anyone of more. That sounded like the man in the letters. Exact. Restrained. Etta tied the packet again. What are you proposing? Silas drew 2 folded sheets from inside his coat. First choice, I pay your return fare from Pueblo to St. Joseph. You stay here until the next stage, Mrs. Fielding will witness the promise. And the second, 6 weeks of paid bookkeeping at Juniper Draw Ranch. He placed the second sheet on the table. Nothing else promised. Nothing else required. Etta read the terms. The wage was fair. The paper named her as Etta Braddock, not prospective wife. A separate room, she said. Yes, with a lock, yes. My trunk remains mine. No one opens it without permission. Agreed. I may leave before 6 weeks. You are paid through your final day, and taken to Redwater or Pueblo, whichever I choose. Silas took a pencil from Agnes's account stand and added the sentence without protest. An advance for practical supplies, Etta said. Recorded against wages. How much? She named the smallest sum that would serve. He wrote it down. The fare you already spent creates no claim? None. The lodging? None. The letters? His hand paused over the paper. They give me questions, not rights. Etta read the final line twice. Then I accept the work. Not the marriage, Silas said. Not the marriage. A knock sounded. Calder entered before anyone invited him. Dust marked his boots, and irritation sat too neatly behind his eyes. The team is settled. His attention went to the agreement. What is that? Miss Braddock will keep the ranch books for 6 weeks, Silas said. Calder gave a short laugh. A stranger does not need access to private records. She is being hired because the records need work. Then let me straighten them. You have had 3 years. Calder's face tightened. Your father never handed office keys to women who arrived under false pretenses. Silas reached into his pocket and placed a small brass key beside the signed agreement. My father is not making this decision. Calder looked at Etta. And if she carries the books back to Missouri? Etta folded her copy of the agreement. Then Mr. Whitcomb will have chosen a poor bookkeeper. You seem certain he has chosen one at all. No, that is what the 6 weeks are for. Agnes appeared in the doorway with a dishcloth in one hand. Mr. Voss, unless you are paying for the parlor, you have used enough of it. Calder touched 2 fingers to his hat, but did not move at once. His gaze settled on the key, then the packet, then the travel trunk. Silas picked up Lila's tintype and held it toward Etta. This belongs with you. Etta took it without touching his hand. She crossed to the trunk, unlocked it, placed the tintype beneath her folded cloak, and laid the blue thread packet beside it. Agnes watched as she closed the lid and turned the key. When Etta returned to the table, Silas pushed the brass office key across the agreement until it rested before her. Calder's contempt disappeared. What replaced it was quieter, sharper, and far more useful fear. By morning, Calder's fear had hardened into contempt. Etta saw it when he entered Agnes Fielding's dining room and found the brass office key hanging from a cord at her waist. He said nothing. That was worse. Silas arrived after breakfast with the buckboard and 2 bay horses, carrying the duplicate employment agreement in his coat. September 25 had dawned clear and cold enough to silver the pump handle. Etta left her small travel trunk locked in Agnes' hall while Silas carried it to the wagon. She kept the worn valise until he asked, Do you want that behind the seat with the trunk, where I can see both? All right. The general store smelled of coffee, lamp oil, leather, and cut pine. Bolts of calico climbed one wall. Tin cups, nails, work gloves, pencils, and ink crowded the shelves. Mr. Bell stood behind the counter with his ledger open. His eyes went first to Silas, then to Etta, then to the key at her waist. Miss Braddock needs supplies, Silas said. Charge them against her wage advance. Separate account. Nothing bridal. Nothing owed. That distinction spared her from having every pencil counted as courtship and every yard of cloth called preparation for a wedding she had not agreed to. Silas made it before anyone else could publicly define the purchase. Etta chose 2 pencils, nibs, black ink, rough gloves, and dark calico for an apron and replacement cuffs. Silas lifted a bolt of blue wool. "The nights turn colder soon. My cloak will serve until I earn another." He returned the wool. "Your choice." 2 women near the ribbon counter had stopped comparing trim. One whispered, "He ought to have waited for the pretty one." The other replied, "Maybe this one keeps house until the other arrives." Etta counted the charges as Mr. Bell entered them. He wrote the nibs twice. "That line is duplicated," she said. He checked, crossed one amount, and initialed the correction. "You do notice figures. That is the arrangement." The woman near the ribbon laughed. "And what arrangement would that be? Paid bookkeeping? Not marriage?" "No." She glanced at Silas as if he might repair the impropriety. He remained beside the counter. The answer belonged to Etta. "I came under a false picture," she said. "I did not come under a false name." The store went still enough for the wall clock to be heard. The bell above the door rang hard. Calder entered with dust on his coat and authority in his stride. "The team is ready," he told Silas. Then he saw the office key. "You gave it to her. You watched me do it," Silas said. Calder stepped closer. "Office keys. Stay with the ranch." His hand rose toward the cord. Etta did not retreat. Silas moved between them before Calder's fingers reached the brass. He did not shove him or raise his voice. He took the key from the cord, held it in his palm, then placed it back in Etta's open hand where everyone could see. "The office is at the ranch," he said. "Miss Braddock works for the ranch." Calder's mouth thinned. "She is still a stranger." "So were you once? Your father hired me. I hired her." Silas closed Etta's fingers around the key and stepped back. "That picture never wrote me an honest word." She did. The statement did not erase Etta's deception. It separated one truth from another. Calder looked toward the watching customers. "I gave your father 17 years, he said. "I was at Juniper Draw before you could keep a saddle straight." "And you were paid, trusted, and given authority," Silas replied. "None of that makes the ranch yours." Calder's face went blank. "Not yours." There was a grievance beneath the fear, older than Etta's arrival in Colorado. "You will regret making private business into a spectacle," he said. Etta slid the key back onto its cord. "You reached for it in a store." Bell coughed into his fist. Calder turned and left. The bell slapped the glass. Silas gathered Etta's parcel. "You could have let me answer sooner. You were doing well. And when I was not, I stepped in." Outside, he secured the travel trunk and valise behind the buckboard seat, tying both where Etta could watch the knots. She climbed using the wheel hub. The road east and south of Redwater crossed tawny grass and shallow cuts left by summer rain. Cottonwoods marked the lower ground, yellow against a broad Colorado sky. Silas kept a deliberate span of seat between them. At the first deep rut, Etta caught the edge. He slowed the bays. "Would you rather sit nearer the center?" She shifted several inches inward. Not against him. Near enough that the next rut would not throw her toward the wheel. "Thank you." They rode another mile. Before she asked, "Did you mean what you said in the store?" "Which part? That the picture never wrote you an honest word." "Pictures do not write. That is an evasion." "Yes." Wind pulled one strand of hair loose beneath her hat. Silas kept his eyes on the road. "Whatever I believed about the face, the things I respected came from the letters. Respect is not trust." "No. And you do not trust me. Not yet." The answer landed without cruelty. Etta pressed one glove against the key at her waist. "Good." He turned his head. "Good. I would distrust a man who trusted too easily after being deceived. That may be the least flattering, sensible thing anyone has said to me. You asked for honesty. I am beginning to understand the expense." Humor warmed his voice. Juniper Draw Ranch appeared beyond the next rise. A weathered house, long barn, bunkhouse, corrals, and cattle scattered over open range. The porch leaned at one corner. A pale patch marked the barn roof. No grand house waited behind the cottonwoods. Work did. Silas stopped beside the porch and set the brake. He climbed down, then stood below Etta, with one forearm offered, palm open. "Do you want it?" She placed her gloved hand on his sleeve and stepped down. His body held steady beneath her weight. The instant her boots reached earth, he released her. He carried the valise and trunk inside, showed her a small room with a narrow bed, washstand, chair, and a lock whose key he placed directly in her hand. Then he led her across the hall to the office. The red cattle ledger lay on a scarred desk beneath the window. Calder had arrived ahead of them on horseback. He stood beside the shelves with one hand on a stack of invoices. "I can explain the system," he said. Etta removed her gloves and sat. "I would rather see it before it is explained." Silas remained near the door, not over her shoulder. Etta opened the ledger to the latest entries. Shipment, feed, losses, purchases. The columns looked orderly at first, too orderly. Halfway down the third page, one total had been written in dark brown ink over a paler figure. 2 pages later, another, then a third. Etta placed her pencil beside the first alteration. "Who changed these?" Calder answered before Silas could. "Corrections after the final count. All 3 counts change. Ink changes too." His gaze sharpened. "You have been here less than a day. The figures have been here longer." Etta turned the ledger so both men could see. 3 death totals rewritten. No date, no initials, no witness mark. Outside, a steer struck the corral rail. Silas came to the desk but did not touch the book. "What do you think it means?" Etta looked at the altered numbers, then at Calder. "It means someone expected the correction to be trusted without being checked." "Then check it," Calder said. "Every number." The challenge carried more confidence than permission. Etta accepted it anyway. Over the next 6 days, Juniper Draw gave up its truth in separate pieces. The spring branding tally came from a drawer in Silas's father's old desk. Feed purchases were tied in string by month. Sale receipts sat in a tin box beneath the shelf. Loss notes were harder to find. Calder produced 3, each written in his own hand, each without a witness mark. Etta began with the cattle the books claimed were dead. Silas taught her the joined JD brand, the age columns, and the difference between spring calves and yearlings carried from the previous season. She asked when she did not know. She wrote nothing she could not support. The missing papers did not appear at random. Purchases carried matching bills. Only entries tied to livestock movement seemed to lose their companions. Etta made a list and kept it folded inside her employment agreement rather than leaving it on the desk. Silas noticed but did not ask to see it. "You expect someone to search your work," he said. "Someone already changed the book. That is not the same as searching your room. No, it is why I will not assume the first trespass is the last." He assigned no guard then. Etta had not asked for one, and he did not use concern to claim authority over her. Instead, he changed the office routine. Every ledger left on the desk was signed at closing, and no file moved without notation. Calder called the practice insulting. Etta called it a record. On September 30, Silas took her to the east pasture before the count. She learned how age showed in frame and horn, and how a joined brand could blur beneath thick winter hair. By September 28, the figures had formed an argument. Feed use had not fallen after the supposed deaths. A freight charge appeared in the bank book without a matching invoice. No sale deposit followed. "It could be equipment," Silas said. "Then there should be a bill." "There is not in the indexed files." Calder stood by the office window with his arms folded. "Ranch work does not wait for every scrap of paper to arrive in order." "No," Etta said. "But missing paper should not always favor the same man." His gaze sharpened. "You have been here 3 days, and the charge has been here 5 months." Silas did not interrupt. That restraint kept the question alive. Calder pushed away from the wall. "You want a cattle count? Count them. Then perhaps we can return to work that matters." "Ownership matters," Silas said. "Those cattle are the work." Calder's expression hardened. "I gave your father 17 years. I kept this place moving when you could barely keep a saddle straight. And you were paid, trusted, and given authority." Silas's voice stayed level. "None of that makes Juniper Draw yours." Calder looked from him to Etta. "Then waste the day." He turned his horse toward the north fence before the final groups came through the gate. Etta watched him leave. "He should hear the result," Boyd said from the saddle. "Not until it is verified," she answered. Silas backed her without a word. The yearlings came through in groups of 10. Dust lifted around their legs. Etta marked each joined J.D. brand on a slate, while Silas and Boyd separated age groups. She counted once, then again. Near sunset, Boyd rode off to help close the far gate, leaving Etta and Silas beside the wagon with the slate, spring tally, and red ledger. "Show me," he said. She placed the books side by side. "The ledger says 18 yearlings died after the late April storm. Yes, the feed purchases say the herd remained larger than that. They could include waste. Some. Not 18 head for this long." She turned to the bank record. "And this freight charge appears 2 days after the storm ended. No invoice, no equipment entry, no sale deposit." Silas bent closer. "What does the live count say?" Etta ran the pencil down the slate one final time. "The ranch has 18 more yearlings alive than the ledger allows. Then the death entry is false." "Likely. And the missing deposit? Possibly a second set of 18 removed elsewhere, or one shipment hidden badly enough to disturb the accounts twice." "You think cattle were sold under the ranch name?" "I think someone wanted the books to show fewer animals than the range held." Silas reached for the line she had marked. His fingers touched hers on the ledger. The contact was slight, no more than skin against paper, but neither of them moved until Etta finished the thought. "The numbers do not prove who changed them." Silas withdrew first. What would? A freight record, a buyer, a payment, something outside Calder's own writing. He studied her face, not as a man comparing it to a tintype, but as if her answer had become another line he meant to understand. "You trust figures more than people. Figures lie when people arrange them dishonestly. That was in your 4th letter. You remember too much. Not enough, apparently." The answer carried no charm, only regret that he had let one man's explanations become the ranch's entire system. They returned to the house after dark. Etta checked the small travel trunk before removing her gloves. She had left it aligned with a dark knot in the floorboard. Now it stood 2 inches beyond it. The lock remained closed. A bright scratch crossed the brass plate near the keyhole. Her pulse quickened, but she did not call out. She unlocked the trunk herself. The blue thread packet lay beneath her folded cloak. Lila's tintype rested beside it, both intact. Nothing else seemed disturbed. Silas stopped at the open doorway when she spoke his name. "May I come in?" Yes, he crossed only as far as the washstand. "What happened?" Etta pointed to the trunk. "It moved." "You are certain?" "I mark positions." She showed him the floorboard knot and the new scratch. He crouched without touching the lock. "Anything missing?" "No. You can take the room beside the kitchen. It is closer to the housekeeper. Whoever opened this may believe I have not noticed. You want to stay. I want the choice." Reluctance tightened his mouth. "Then the choice is yours. Do not confront Calder. You think it was him. I think someone entered a locked room after I began checking his records. That is not proof. You are determined to make anger wait on proof. Someone has to." Silas nodded once. "I will place a man outside the house after dark, where I can see him." "Yes, then do." Etta relocked the trunk and returned it to the position where the intruder had left it, not the one she preferred. If someone checked again, she wanted the next movement to speak. On October 1, she returned to the office before breakfast. The invoice shelves had been arranged by month, but the index contained one April number crossed. So lightly it nearly vanished. She checked the corresponding bundle. Nothing. Then she removed the feed bills and found a sealed folder wedged flat behind them. Dust covered the paper except where 2 recent fingers had disturbed it. Silas entered as she drew it free. "What did you find?" "A file someone did not want indexed. The seal was old, not legal, only a drop of plain wax used to keep the pages together." Etta broke it. The first sheet listed a routine yard fee. The second recorded stock pen handling at Pueblo. The third was smaller, folded twice, with a dark mark near the signature line shaped like a falling tear. Etta opened it fully. Across the top were the words Pueblo Freight Receipt. Beneath them stood the date April 28, 1886. 18 live head had been received for shipment. The handling name was Calder Voss. At the upper right, in faded black ink, was the number 417. The receipt did not prove theft by itself. Etta knew that before Silas finished reading it. He stood across the desk with one hand braced on the scarred wood, his eyes fixed on the date, the count, and Calder's name. April 28, 1886. 18 live head. The same number the red ledger had buried beneath a false death entry. The storm ended 2 days before this, he said. Then those cattle were not shipped as dead stock. No, his voice flattened. I am calling Calder in. Etta rose before he reached the door. Wait, he kept moving. She caught his wrist. The rough wool of his sleeve pressed beneath her fingers. His pulse beat hard against the inside of her palm. Silas stopped. Not gradually, entirely. He looked down at her hand, then at her face, but he did not pull away. If you confront him now, she said, he will know what survived. He knows what he did. He may know only part of what we found. His name is on the receipt. The receipt gives us a shipment. It does not give us a buyer, a destination, a payment, or an accomplice. Silas's jaw tightened. It gives me enough to remove him from the ranch. And then what? He rides away with every missing fact still in his head. You think he will destroy the rest. I think a man who hides freight papers behind feed bills does not trust honest explanation to protect him. The anger in Silas did not vanish, it changed shape. Etta felt the change beneath her hand before she saw it in his shoulders. What do you want to do? He asked. Only then did she release him. Heat remained in her fingers. She closed them around the desk edge instead. Secure the receipt, leave the folder where he expects it. Then ask a question that sounds smaller than the answer. Silas studied her. You have done this before. Not with cattle. With thieves? With customers who claimed they had paid accounts the cash drawer did not remember. And how did you prove it? One man named the missing coin, before I told him which coin was gone. A faint breath left Silas. Then we wait for Calder to name what he should not know, yes. He crossed to the iron cash box beneath the shelves. This has one current key. Who else had one before? My father, me. Calder? Not to the box. He had an office key years ago. Did he return it? Silas paused. I believed so. Belief is not a record. No. He accepted the correction without defending himself. Etta took a clean envelope from the desk drawer and slid receipt 417 inside. Silas heated red sealing wax over the lamp. One drop fell across the flap. He pressed his initials into it with the brass stamp used for ranch correspondence, SW. Etta turned the envelope over and drew a fine pencil line from the flap onto the body, then crossed it once. If the wax is replaced, this will not match. Suspicious bookkeeper, useful distinction. Silas locked the envelope inside the cash box. The lid shut with a heavy iron sound. Etta returned the hidden April folder to the shelf, but she replaced the receipt with a folded blank sheet of the same thickness. She wedged the folder behind the feed bills exactly as she had found it. If someone checks, she said, we learn how quickly the office carries news, and until then, we work. For the next 2 days, Calder gave her nothing. He brought loss notes, answered questions, and kept his temper beneath a layer of professional boredom. Etta almost admired the discipline. A guilty man who shouted was easier than one who waited. On October 4, he entered the office carrying 2 spring reports. Silas stood outside the open window speaking with Boyd about a lame gelding. Near enough to hear, far enough for Calder to believe the conversation belonged to him and Etta. She set the reports beside the red ledger and opened the bank book to the unindexed April yard charge. This entry, she said. Was it for equipment? Calder did not look at the page. No. Feed? No. Then I will need the invoice before I classify it. He dropped the reports onto the desk. Those 18 were dead stock. Etta's pencil stopped. She had not said cattle. She had not said 18. She had not said the charge connected to the false death entry at all. Calder heard his own mistake after it left him. His gaze moved toward the invoice shelves. The hidden folder sat behind the feed bills, invisible from where he stood unless he knew where to look. Dead stock, Etta repeated. You mean carcasses, storm loss, shipped through Pueblo, hides and salvage. Then why did the stockyard record live head? The question landed before he could prepare. Calder's face emptied. Outside, Silas's conversation ceased. You found the folder, Calder said. Not a question. Etta placed the pencil down. Which folder? He stepped closer. Do not play games with me. I asked about an unindexed yard charge. You supplied 18 cattle, a storm loss, and a hidden file. Silas entered through the office door. He did not stand in front of Etta. He took position beside the desk. Anything you want to explain? Calder looked from one to the other. Your clerk is baiting me. Did you handle 18 live head through Pueblo on April 28th? Silas asked. Calder's mouth hardened. I handled whatever the ranch required. I did not authorize that shipment. Your father gave me authority long before you learned to read a freight bill. My father was dead 3 years by then. The room tightened around the fact. Calder turned toward Etta. You think one paper makes you clever? No, I think it makes the next paper easier to find. There may be no next paper. Then you should have no objection to our looking. His hand closed around the back of the empty chair. The wood creaked. I object to a stranger turning 17 years of work into suspicion. 17 years of work do not answer what happened on April 28th, Etta said. Nor do they make Juniper Draw yours. That struck deeper than accusation. Calder released the chair. You will regret letting her set the measure of loyalty. Silas's voice remained level. Loyalty does not require me to ignore my own cattle. Calder left without the reports he had brought. His boots crossed the porch, then the yard. A horse broke into a hard trot beyond the barn. Etta waited until the sound faded. He knew the count, Silas said. He knew the charge involved cattle before I named cattle. He knew the folder had survived before I said a folder existed. And he called them dead stock, Silas added. When the receipt says live head. Etta looked toward the cash box. Now he knows we have the record. We should move it. No. If he thinks it is still where we found it, he may act on the wrong assumption. Silas glanced toward the hidden folder. And if he checks the cash box, then we will know he has access he should not have. You are comfortable using proof as bait. No, she met his gaze. I am comfortable admitting we do not yet have enough. He nodded once. Then we keep watch. That night the temperature fell hard after sunset. The sky cleared, and frost began to silver the grass near the corrals. Etta finished copying a feed total and locked the office with her brass key. Silas checked the cash box seal beside her. Unbroken, the pencil cross still met across the flap. Receipt 14 remained inside. For now, they stepped into the yard together. Beyond the barn, cattle shifted in the dark, their breath pale beneath the stars. A rider moved somewhere near the south fence. Did you send someone out? Etta asked. Silas listened. No. The horse quickened. Then came a sharp metallic snap from beyond the lower pasture, wire giving way. Silas was already running when Boyd shouted from the darkness. Fence is cut, another hand called from the wash. Yearlings are breaking south. Silas turned once. Office slate. Meet me at the gate. Etta did not ask whether he meant her. She unlocked the office, seized the slate and chalk, then ran toward the lower corral. Hooves struck the earth in a gathering thunder. A tight group separated from the larger herd and drove toward the broken line. Not random cattle, yearlings. Joined J.D. brands flashed pale where moonlight caught their hides. Etta took position at the gatepost. Bring them through in one line, she shouted. Boyd swore from his saddle. She'll get trampled. Silas wheeled his horse between the cattle and the wash. Miss Braddock holds the count. You hold the flank. The order cut through the noise. The first animals came fast. Etta marked them as they passed. 4, 7, 11. A steer veered toward the opening in the fence. She dropped the slate long enough to drag the temporary gate rope across the gap. Hemp burned through her gloves. The steer checked, tossed its head, then followed the others. Silas drove the last pair through and swung down from the saddle. How many? Etta looked at the slate. 17 marks. Then one more yearling broke from the dark and ran through the gate alone. She drew the final line. 18. Silas turned toward the cut fence. The wire had not failed. It had been twisted apart. From the far side of the pasture came the fading beat of a horse running south. Calder rode in from the north. 5 minutes later, his mount lathered beneath the saddle. What happened? He demanded. Etta held up the slate. Someone chose the same number the ledger tried to bury. Calder's eyes went to the marks. For the first time, his anger was no disguise at all. It was fear. Calder's fear vanished before any of the men could name it. A cut fence proves nothing, he said. Wire fails. Etta lifted the twisted end in her gloved hand. Not after someone turns it until the strands part. Silas dismounted beside her and examined the break. Boyd, take 2 men and follow the south trail until daylight. No heroics. Mark where it leaves Juniper Draw. Calder's horse shifted beneath him. You are sending men after shadows. I am sending them after tracks. Silas turned to the others. Move these 18 into the south holding pasture. 2 men on watch at all times. No one opens that gate alone. Calder's mouth tightened. You would change the whole ranch routine because she counted marks on a slate, because someone cut my fence for a selected group. You do not know they were selected. Etta held up the slate. The larger herd broke north. Only these 18 were driven toward the opening. Calder's gaze touched the marks, then the cattle. Coincidence. Then it is an unusually obedient one. Silas looked at Calder. Where were you when the wire gave? Checking the north line. Alone? The work does not always wait for witnesses. Tonight it should have. The answer carried no accusation, but it placed one more fact where it could not be ignored. Calder turned his horse toward the barn. You will ruin good men by teaching them every mistake is theft. A good man can survive being checked, Etta said. He looked back at her. Can you? She felt the intended wound, the false tintype, the public confession, the knowledge that any accusation from her could be turned into proof she accused others to hide herself. Etta did not lower the slate. I already have. Calder rode away. By dawn on October 6, Boyd returned without catching the rider. He had found hoofprints crossing the ranch boundary, then losing themselves among hard stones near the south road. 1 horse. No wagon. No identifying shoe. Whoever it was knew where the ground stops holding a track, Boyd said. Silas studied the line of the distant road, or had ridden it before. The 18 yearlings remained in the south holding pasture under guard. Etta slept 3 hours, then returned to count them in daylight. Silas provided the gray mare again. She mounted without grace and adjusted the reins until the animal stopped testing her. Boyd watched from his saddle. You intend to ride every time a number needs proving. Only until the numbers learn to walk into the office. He laughed despite himself. The pasture lay beyond a shallow draw where scrub oak crowded the lower ground. The yearlings moved restlessly inside the temporary fencing, still unsettled from the night. Etta kept to the gate while Silas and the hands pushed them through in groups small enough to read each brand. Joined J.D. on the left hip. Yearling frame. 18, no more, no less. Etta marked the last line and compared it with the spring tally. Same age group, she said. The group written dead after the storm? Boyd asked. The books say 18 from that age group died. These 18 prove the herd held more than the ledger admitted. They do not prove each animal is the same one named in a false entry. Cattle do not have names in a ledger. That is why brands, dates, and counts must agree. Silas leaned against the gate rail. She is saying we know the number was made false. We do not yet know every animal Calder moved before or after it. Boyd glanced toward the ranch house. You said his name. I said the name written on the freight receipt. Silas's tone stopped the hand from turning suspicion into verdict. Etta noticed that. Anger still lived in him, but he was making it obey proof. The sky darkened before noon. Wind came down from the west, carrying cold rain in a gray sheet. Silas ordered the hands to settle the cattle against the lower ridge and pointed Etta toward the line shack. The mare knows the way. So do I. Then both of you can be right. She rode beside him as the first drops struck the brim of her hat. The gray mare placed each hoof with patient judgment. Etta's thighs already ached from the saddle. When the mare slipped on wet stone, Silas brought his horse close enough to block her from the wash, but did not seize Etta's reins. You have her, he said. She steadied the mare. Yes, the reins strengthened. By the time they reached the shack, water ran from Etta's cloak and her fingers had stiffened around the leather. Silas dismounted first and took the gray mare's bridle. Can you get down? I can. Her knees nearly folded when her boots met the ground. His hand came beneath her elbow, firm for one breath, then released when she regained balance. Inside, the line shack held a rough bench, a cold iron stove, 2 folded blankets, and last winter's kindling stacked beneath the wall. Silas coaxed flame through dry shavings. Etta removed her wet gloves and held her hands near the heat. Are you hurt? He asked. Only instructed by the saddle. It is a strict teacher. She glanced at him. Was that humor? A poor attempt, not your poorest. He handed her a blanket instead of placing it around her. Etta accepted it and wrapped it over her shoulders. Silas sat at the far end of the bench, leaving a proper space between them. Rain hammered the roof. "You did well at the gate," he said. "I counted. You held the rope while a frightened steer decided whether you were part of the fence. The rope deserves more praise. The rope did not choose to stay." The words entered a place in her that praise usually missed. They were not generous. They were accurate. Etta watched steam lift from her gloves. "My family used to praise my usefulness when they wanted me to accept something unkind." Silas waited. "They would say I was sensible enough not to need what prettier women expected." "What did they expect you to surrender?" "Being seen." The rain softened briefly, then returned harder. Leela could enter a room and people decided she had brought light with her. "I entered with account books, and people remembered the books. I remembered the woman who argued shame already charged. Interest. You remembered the line. I remembered the mind behind it." Etta pulled the blanket closer. "Before you saw my face, yes, and after you saw it." Silas's hands rested open between his knees. "After, I was angry because the face was not the one I had been shown." He did not soften the truth. "I was not disappointed by yours." Etta met his gaze. "Those are not the same thing." "No." The answer let her breathe. He moved one hand onto the bench between them, not touching her. Near enough to make the distance a question. "You still do not trust me entirely," she said. "No, and I do not trust you entirely." "No, yet you remember my words. And you stopped me from wasting the best evidence we had because I was angry." His eyes dropped once to her mouth, then returned to hers. Etta felt the pull before either of them moved. Silas leaned closer, slowly, leaving room for refusal. The space between them narrowed until his forehead nearly touched hers. He stopped there. "Do you want me to kiss you?" Her first impulse was yes. It came warm and immediate. The second came from deeper ground. She did not want gratitude, loneliness, or relief to answer in her place. Not yet. Silas stopped fully, no persuasion, no wounded smile. He leaned back and removed his hand from the bench. "All right," Etta studied him. "You are not angry?" "I was angry before I asked. That is not what I meant." "I know." He rose to check the rain, through the cracked door, giving her space without turning the refusal into punishment. "You do not owe me a different answer." By late afternoon, the storm had weakened enough for them to ride back. The yearlings remained secure. Boyd had doubled the south watch. Etta's clothes were damp but no longer dripping, and the soreness in her legs had settled into a dull complaint. She left the gray mare at the barn and crossed to the ranch house while Silas spoke with the hands. Her room door remained locked. She entered, checked the small travel trunk against the floorboard mark, and found it where she had left it. The brass lock bore the old scratch. No new one. Etta opened the lid. The folded cloak lay on top. Beneath it, the blue thread packet remained intact. 7 letters from Silas. 7 retained copies of her own. All 14 pieces were there. The relief lasted only until she lifted the packet. Beside it lay an empty rectangle in the cloth. Etta searched the sewing roll, the spare collar, the bottom corners, though she knew the answer before her hands finished proving it. Lila's tintype was gone. The empty place beside the letters had the exact shape of Lila's tintype. Etta stood over the open travel trunk until certainty replaced hope. The blue thread packet remained intact. Her cloak, sewing roll, and comb had not been disturbed. Only the picture was gone. When Silas answered her call, he stopped at the threshold. "May I come in?" "Yes." He crossed to the trunk but did not touch it. "Anything else missing?" "No." "Who knew it was here?" "You." "Agnes may have guessed. Calder saw you return it to me." Silas examined the scratch near the lock. "Someone opened this twice. Or searched once until he found the weapon he needed. The harvest social is 4 days from now. A stolen likeness was useless in private. It required an audience." "I am going," Etta said. "You do not have to. If I stay away, Calder will tell the story without me. He may do that even if you stand beside him. Then he will have to lie while I am listening." Silas accepted the answer. Over the next 4 days, neither mentioned the missing tintype where Calder could hear. Receipt 417 remained sealed inside the cash box, the wax and pencil cross unbroken. The 18 yearlings stayed under a 2-man watch in the south holding pasture. On October 12, Calder asked whether Etta intended to attend the social. Do ranch accounts require dancing now? No, she said, but hidden pictures seem to require company. Redwater's church hall glowed with lantern light that evening. Quilts covered the tables. A fiddle player tested a tune near the stove. Before Etta entered, she saw Calder near the livery, speaking with a stranger in a dark neckerchief. The man wore narrow-roweled spurs polished by freight yard boards rather than range dust. Calder passed him a folded paper. The stranger tucked it inside his coat, mounted, and took the south road before the first dance. "Do you know him?" Etta asked. Silas followed her gaze. No. Calder turned and saw them watching. "Remember the spurs," Etta said, "and the neckerchief." "I will inside." Agnes met Etta near the door and straightened the pin at her collar. "Your hands are cold. They will warm, only if you stop holding them like weapons." Silas stood near enough to be present, not close enough to claim her. Curiosity opened a space around them. The first dance ended. Calder stepped from the far wall with Lila's tintype held between two fingers. Lantern light caught the pale oval of her face. "Before Whitcomb asks Redwater to welcome his bookkeeper," he said, "folks ought to know which woman he paid to bring west." Conversations died unevenly. Calder raised the picture. This is the bride he expected, not the woman keeping his records. Every glance traveled between Lila's face and Etta's, her words beside another woman's beauty, as though only one could be believed. "Would you care to explain why an honest woman needs another woman's likeness?" Silas moved one step. Etta lifted her hand. He stopped. "The picture is false," she said. "I told Mr. Whitcomb before my trunk left Redwater Street. My name is Etta Braddock. Every letter was mine. Every word was mine. The woman in that tintype never wrote him a line." "A confession after the fare was spent," Calder said. "The fare brought the writer who received it. It brought a counterfeit bride." The word struck where he intended. Etta remained standing. "I am not Silas Whitcomb's bride. No vows were spoken. No property changed hands. I work for wages under an agreement witnessed by Mrs. Fielding." Calder smiled toward the crowd. "And we are expected to trust the books because she admits one deception before beginning another." "My error is not hidden," Etta said. "Yours is." A murmur moved through the room. Silas came beside her, not in front. "The photograph was dishonest," he said. "He did not protect her with a lie. She told me so herself. You entered her locked room, stole that tintype, and carried it here because you feared what she might find in an open ledger." Calder's fingers tightened around the plate. "You cannot prove I took it. You possess it. She may have given it to me." "I did not," Etta said. Silas held out his hand. "You are finished at Juniper Draw." Calder stared at him. "Over a woman you have known 19 days? Over theft, interference with ranch records, using private access to punish someone who questioned you. I gave that ranch 17 years, and you were paid for 17 years. Service did not purchase Juniper Draw." Calder's face hardened around an older grievance. "Your father trusted me before you knew enough to run it. My father is dead. I own the consequences of whom I trust now. You expect me to walk away with nothing. You leave with the wages owed through today. Nothing that belongs to the ranch." Calder looked at Etta. "You have not won. This was not a contest." "Give her the picture," Silas said. Calder slapped it into Silas's open palm. Silas offered it to Etta. "Yours to decide." She placed it inside her reticule. "Leela's face. My responsibility." Calder pushed through the doors. Someone asked whether the dance would continue. The room resumed in fragments, not acceptance, only movement after pressure. Silas faced Etta and opened his hand. "Will you dance with me?" Every watching person waited to turn her answer into another story. Etta placed her hand in his. Yes, he kept proper distance. His right hand hovered near her waist until she nodded. Then it settled there, steady without pulling her closer. She missed the first turn. He adjusted without comment. "You let me speak," she said. "It was your truth. You could have stopped him sooner and taken the answer from you. Would you have wanted that?" "No. Thank you. You do not owe me gratitude for listening." "I know." That was why she could offer it. When the dance ended, Etta stepped outside. Frost silvered the road. Silas followed and remained near the doorway until she turned. "I do not want your pity. You do not have it. I do not want a kiss because you think tonight wounded me." "All right." He waited. Etta closed half the distance. "Do you want to kiss me?" "Yes." No persuasion, no claim. Etta placed one hand against his coat, rose onto her toes, and kissed him. His mouth met hers with restrained warmth, brief, certain. He did not draw her closer until she leaned in, and even then his hand came only to her upper arm. The kiss ended before it could become a promise neither had spoken. Silas stayed near, giving her room to regret it. She did not. Inside, the fiddle began again, thinner than before. No cheer followed them outside. No one had forgiven Etta, and no one needed to. The truth had taken its rightful place in the room. That was enough for one night, though not enough for what waited beyond it. On the south road home, lantern light caught fresh wagon ruts crossing the track, with cattle prints pressed along both sides. The marks led toward darkness beyond Juniper Draw's boundary. Silas slowed the team. Those were not here this afternoon. The man with the freight yard spurs left before Calder entered the hall. "We check the pasture first." But when Juniper Draw came into view, the ranch office door stood open by the width of a hand. Silas stopped the buckboard. Etta chose his forearm to descend. They crossed the yard together. The office lock showed no split wood or pry mark. Drawers hung open, and papers covered the floor. The red cattle ledger remained on the desk. Beneath the shelves, the iron cash box stood with its lid bent upward. Silas lit the lamp. Etta went to the box. Coins remained in the tray. 2 banknotes lay beneath the account book. The sealed envelope was gone. "He did not come for money," she said. "He came for receipt 417. Silas looked toward the black windows and the south pasture beyond them. Darkness hid the cattle and any trail leaving the ranch. "We do not search blind." He woke Boyd and sent the fastest rider toward Redwater. "Find Deputy Sheriff Owen Tate. Tell him the office was entered, evidence taken, and we may have cattle moving south." The rider disappeared down the road. Etta stood beside the broken cash box, with Leela's tintype in her reticule and the red ledger beneath her hand. Calder had used one lie before a crowd, and another behind a locked door. The first had failed. The second had not yet finished. The missing money was not the first thing Etta noticed. It was the untouched money. Coins remained in the iron tray. 2 banknotes lay beneath the account book. Whoever had bent the cash box lid had ignored everything that could be spent and taken only the sealed envelope. Silas lifted the damaged lid, studied the pry marks, then lowered it without disturbing the papers across the floor. "A bar did this," he said. Etta turned toward the office door. The frame was sound, no splintering or pry marks. The door was opened with a key. Silas's gaze moved to the empty hook beside the desk where his father had once kept a foreman's spare. "Or left unlocked. I locked it." "So did I." The office smelled of lamp oil and cold ash. Etta crossed to the stove. Gray residue lay beneath the grate. "This was clean before we left." Silas crouched beside her but did not touch the ash. The day was warm enough that no one needed a fire. "He may have burned the receipt here. Then why take the envelope? To make us search somewhere else." The answer came before Etta wanted it. Her room. She reached it first. The door remained closed. Her room key still hung at her waist. She unlocked it and entered without Silas crowding past. The small travel trunk stood where she had left it. Lila's tintype rested inside her reticule on the chair. She had carried it there from Redwater. The blue thread packet lay beneath her folded cloak. On top of it sat the empty envelope. The broken red wax still held half of Silas's initials. Etta stopped beside the trunk. "Do not touch it." Silas remained at the threshold. "I was not going to." She looked at him. "You had to ask whether I put it there." "No, you thought it." "I thought Calder wanted me to." His answer came without delay. "That is not the same thing." "No." She kept her hands at her sides. The envelope could accuse her only if fear completed the argument. Silas looked at the lock. A fresh scratch crossed the older one near the keyhole. "He came into this room after the social, or before it and returned tonight. Either way, the envelope stays where it is until Tate sees it." "Yes." Etta closed the trunk lid without touching the paper, leaving it propped above the envelope so no air stirred it. Silas locked the room with her key only after she gave it to him, then returned it. "You are going to Redwater at first light," he said. The words struck harder because his voice remained controlled. "No." Calder has entered your room twice, cut a fence, taken evidence, and used a public gathering to cover his tracks. Then ask what I intend to do." "This is not a question," Etta stared at him. The kiss outside the church hall had not earned him this, neither had his restraint in the line shack. "You believe I stole the receipt?" she asked. "No." "You believe Calder planted the envelope?" "Yes." "Then why am I the one losing the office, the records, and the work?" "Because he is willing to come through a locked door to reach you, and that gives you the right to remove me?" "It gives me the duty to keep you alive. My life is not a ranch gate you can close without asking." Silas's jaw tightened. "I will not gamble with you. You are already doing it. You are gambling that I will forgive being managed because you call it protection." He took one breath, then another. "The buckboard leaves at first light." Etta unfastened the brass office key from the cord at her waist. "Then this goes back to you." His eyes dropped to it. "That is not what I asked. You took the work from me before asking anything." She placed the key on the washstand. "A key is not mine if I keep it only while you are unafraid." He lifted one hand as though to reach for her, then stopped before contact. Touch would not close the question he had refused to ask. "Etta." "No." She stepped back. "You are not protecting me honorably when you decide that my answer does not matter." Hoofbeats sounded in the yard. Deputy Sheriff Owen Tate arrived before dawn with the writer Silas had sent. He was a spare man in a brown coat, his badge dulled beneath one lapel. He listened once, asked few questions, and began with the office. He examined the unforced door, the pried cash box, the cold stove, and the floor beneath the desk. Then Etta unlocked her room and stood aside while Tate inspected the trunk. He saw the empty envelope where it had been planted. Using a clean cloth, he lifted it by one corner, noted its position, and sealed it in an evidence cover with the date and his initials. "Who touched it before me?" he asked. "No one," Etta said. Tate looked to Silas. "No one," Silas confirmed. Boyd entered from the yard before Tate finished. Mud reached his boots nearly to the ankle. "South holding pasture is empty." Silas turned. "All of them?" Gate chain was closed, but the lower pin had been pulled and set back after. 2 horses and a small wagon went south. More cattle tracks until the hard ground. Etta remembered the stranger's freight yard spurs and the folded paper Calder passed him. "The man from the livery," she said. "He left the social before Calder raised the tintype." Tate wrote the description. "Dark neckerchief, narrow-rolled spurs." "And he took the south road," Silas added. Only then did the plan become visible. Calder remained before witnesses in Redwater. His accomplice moved the cattle. Calder rode back later, opened the office with a key, took the receipt, planted the envelope, and tried to burn the paper. "At least 2 men," Tate said. "Maybe more." "We follow the trail," Etta said. Silas answered before Tate could. "Tate and I will. You go to Redwater." "You still have not asked. The cattle are already gone, which makes my work more necessary, not less. It makes Calder more dangerous. Danger does not make my judgment disappear." Tate closed his notebook but did not interfere. Silas stood between fear and reason, and fear won. "You leave with Boyd after sunrise." Etta looked at him until hurt cooled into decision. "Then I leave because I choose not to remain where my consent is considered optional." She packed. The blue thread packet went beneath her clothes in the small travel trunk. Leela's tintype stayed in the reticule inside her worn valise. Boyd loaded both pieces onto the buckboard while Etta watched the knots. Silas waited near the porch in the black coat he had worn to the social. He did not offer his hand. "Agnes has been told to expect you," he said. "You arranged that quickly. I meant to keep you safe. Meaning is not consequence." He took the office key from the washstand and held it as though it weighed more than brass. "I will return it. Only when you understand it is not yours to take for my own good." Boyd clicked to the bays. The wagon rolled toward Redwater. Etta did not look back until the ranch house had nearly disappeared behind the rise. Silas still stood in the road. Tate waited in the office until the sound of wheels faded. Then he and Silas turned to the stove. Tate loosened the ash with a clean iron scoop. Most of the paper collapsed at a touch. Near the back, where soot had smothered the flame, a curled brown fragment remained. Tate lifted it with forceps and laid it on a clean sheet. One edge was black. Across the center survived 3 marks, 417, the lower curve of the tear-shaped ink blot and the first part of Calder Voss's signature. Tate sealed the fragment and wrote the time. "This may connect the burned paper to the freight records in Pueblo," he said. Silas's gaze moved from the evidence cover to the office door. No force marks. Then to the empty hook beside his father's desk. "Calder had a foreman key," he said. "My father issued it years ago. Returned? I believed so." Tate waited. Silas looked down at the brass key Etta had given back. Belief is not a record. Outside, the south trail led toward Pueblo. Behind him, the woman who understood the records was riding away because he had mistaken fear for authority. Edit. By October 16, Etta had turned Agnes Fielding's parlor into a map of Calder Voss's absences. Stage notes lay beside copied store charges. Dates from the red cattle ledger ran down one sheet in black ink. On another, Etta listed every time Calder had gone to Pueblo without a matching ranch purchase. Agnes brought coffee, took one look at the table, and moved the sugar bowl to a sideboard. "You are making war with paper," she said. "Paper remembers where men prefer it not to." Etta drew a line from April 28 to the unindexed freight charge. Calder had been gone 2 days that week. In June, another unexplained absence stood beside a smaller loss entry. September brought a third trip, followed by his questions about whether old freight files were ever discarded. The pattern did not prove where the stolen yearlings had gone, but it answered one question. Calder's visits to Pueblo had not been ordinary ranch business. They gathered around entries that made cattle disappear. Etta opened her small travel trunk. The blue thread packet still lay beneath her folded cloak. Lila's tintype remained inside the reticule in her worn valise, where Etta had placed it after leaving Juniper Draw. She moved the packet into the valise and locked the trunk again. The letters were not evidence of cattle theft, but they were proof of the handwriting she knew well enough to recognize if someone tried to imitate Silas. Agnes watched her turn the key. "Are you going somewhere?" "Not until I know where the cattle are." "That was not my question." Etta rested one hand on the trunk lid. "Pueblo, if the records point there." A knock sounded at the front door. Agnes did not hurry. She opened it, spoke low, then returned with Deputy Sheriff Owen Tate and Silas. Tate carried 2 sealed evidence covers inside a leather case. Silas carried nothing except the brass office key. He stopped inside the parlor and waited. Agnes looked at Etta. "Do you want them here?" "Yes." Only then did Silas cross the threshold. Tate placed the evidence case on the table. "The empty envelope was sealed in your room at Juniper Draw. The burned fragment was sealed at the office stove. Neither has left my custody." He opened the outer case without breaking the individual seals. Through one cover, Etta saw the broken wax and half of Silas's initials. Through the other, a curled brown edge held the number 417. "The cattle trail followed the south road for nearly 6 miles, Tate continued. "After that, it reached hard ground and wagon traffic. 2 horses, 1 small wagon, 18 yearlings, near as Boyd could judge." "The stranger from the livery," Etta said. "Likely." Tate looked at her date sheets. "What have you found?" She showed him Calder's Pueblo absences, freight charges, and altered losses. "The trips gather around missing records. He may use the same freight office, the same intermediary, or the same buyer. We need the April register before anyone alters it." "Then we go to Pueblo," Silas said. Etta's gaze went to him. "Who is we?" His hand closed once around the office key, then opened. "Whoever you choose." He set the key on the table between them, not pushed toward her, not used as a bargain. "This belongs to you whether you return to Juniper Draw, go east, or never speak to me again." Etta did not reach for it yet. Silas kept his eyes on the brass. "I called it protection. It was fear, and I made the choice for you." No defense followed. "You believed Calder planted the envelope," she said. "Yes." "You believed I had not taken the receipt." "Yes, and still you removed me." "Yes." The third answer cost him more than the others. "I thought keeping you away from danger mattered more than asking what you wanted. I was wrong. Being afraid does not give you authority over me." "No, nor does caring." His jaw tightened, but he nodded. "No." Tate looked toward the window, granting them what privacy a lawman could offer in a room full of evidence. Agnes remained beside the door with her arms folded. Etta picked up the office key. "I have not forgiven you. I know. I am taking this because you returned what was mine. That is why I brought it. Etta slipped the key into her reticule. Then I choose Pueblo. Silas did not smile. Relief would have asked too much of her. Tate examined the copies she intended to carry and said the original red ledger should go as well. By October 19, Boyd had brought it from Juniper Draw under seal, along with Etta's copy of the employment agreement. Agnes agreed to keep the small travel trunk and Lila's tintype. Etta packed the blue thread packet, copied dates, pencils, and one change of clothes in the worn valise. You may find the road back less certain than the road there, Agnes said. That is usually true. Then make certain the choice remains yours. Tate rode ahead of the buckboard on the 18-mile road to Pueblo. The morning was cold and bright, the sky washed clean after the earlier rain. Silas held the reins. He did not mention the kiss outside the church hall. He did not ask whether Etta planned to return to the ranch. The restraint felt different now. Before, it had made room for trust. After his mistake, it had to prove he understood the cost of closing that room. The road dropped through a shallow wash. One wheel struck a rut, throwing Etta toward the center of the seat. Silas braced his boot and opened his free hand between them. He did not take hers. Etta looked at the offered palm, the office key pressed against her reticule. His apology remained unfinished not because it lacked words, but because no apology could complete itself in one day. She placed her hand in his. His fingers closed only after her palm settled. Warmth moved through the contact, steady and unhurried. He did not lift her hand or press it. He held it through the next stretch of rough road, then loosened when the ground leveled. Etta did not withdraw. This is not full forgiveness, she said. I know. Do not make me repeat it. I will not. Pueblo announced itself through smokes, rail whistles, wagon noise, and the smell of stock pens before the buildings came into view. Tate led them to the freight office beside the yards. Henry Morrow was a narrow man with ink on 2 fingers and a green shade pushed above his brow. He listened to Tate, examined the sealed fragment without opening it, and reached for a bound register. Receipt numbers are kept by date, he said. 417 would be April. He turned thick pages until April 28 appeared. His finger stopped. 18 live head, joined J.D. brand, handled by Calder Voss. Silas leaned closer but did not touch the register. Destination booked through an intermediary account. Name says C. Vale Freight. A false name? Tate asked. Could be a broker. Could be a man who does not want his own name beside the cattle. Morrow followed the account marks to another page. Same account appears yesterday. Etta felt Silas's hand tighten once around hers, then ease. For what? She asked. Morrow read the entry twice. 18 head received this morning from a South Road drover. Shipment leaves tomorrow evening. Brand joined. J.D. Tate's expression hardened. Where are they held? Morrow turned the register toward them. The final column carried 2 words in fresh ink. Pen 6. Pen 6 stood beyond the freight office, enclosed by high plank rails darkened with years of weather and cattle dust. Henry Morrow did not lead them there at once. He turned the register back toward himself and laid one ink-stained finger beneath the fresh entry. Before we move, he said, this page stays under lock. Deputy Sheriff Owen Tate nodded. Make a copy in my presence. Morrow pulled a clean sheet from the desk and copied the date, intermediary account, brand, count, arrival time, and pen assignment. He signed beneath it, then added that the copy had been made from the bound freight register on October 20, 1886, in the presence of Tate, Silas Whitcomb, and Etta Braddock. Tate signed as witness. Morrow placed the original register inside the office safe and turned the key. Now, no one changes the line while we are in the yard. Etta studied the loose shipping authorization clipped beside the arrival slip. Silas's name appeared at the bottom. The letters were almost right. Almost was enough. He did not sign this. Silas came beside her. You are certain? Your W opens wide before the second stroke. This one is closed. You leave more space before the final T. Whoever wrote this began confidently and crowded the end. Morrow glanced between them. You know his hand from ranch papers. From letters written before I ever saw his ranch. Silas took 2 genuine invoices from his coat. The comparison made the forgery plain even to Morrow. Tate touched neither paper. Leave both where they are, mister. Morrow, can the current order be removed without tearing the file? Yes, then place it under your seal. Morrow did so, but Etta stopped him before he carried it away. We should not remove the cattle. Silas turned. Why not? Because Calder does not know the register is secured. If Pen 6 empties before he arrives, he knows we are waiting. Tate followed her reasoning. You think he will come for the payment, or to confirm departure. Either gives him reason to carry the paper trail with him. Morrow checked the yard note. Payment is by bank draft after inspection. The account holder must sign. Silas looked through the freight office window toward the pens. Then we wait. Pen 6 held exactly 18 yearlings. The joined J.D. brand marked every left hip. Their hides carried fresh pale dust from the south road, and one animal bore a scrape along the flank where brush had caught it during the night drive. Silas remained outside the rail, one hand closed around the top board. He did not reach for the gate. Same age group, he said. The ones from the south holding pasture, Tate asked. Yes. Etta checked them against the copied spring tally, and the group selected when the fence was cut. The cattle were no longer only a number in a false ledger. They breathed, shifted, and struck the planks with impatient hooves. Calder had written them dead, tried to drive them away, failed, then used Etta's public humiliation as cover to steal them properly. That was the pattern. The listener's question was no longer whether he had acted. It was whether he would reveal enough to hold him. Tate positioned 2 trusted yardmen near the exits. Morrow returned to the office. Silas waited beside the main cattle lane. Etta stood where she could see both the office door and Pen 6. No one spoke of danger as a reason to send her away. Near noon, the stranger in the dark neckerchief entered the yard from the south gate. The narrow-rolled spurs struck the boards with the same light metallic sound Etta remembered from Redwater. He checked Pen 6, then walked to the freight office. Calder arrived 10 minutes later. He wore a clean coat and carried the confidence of a man who believed the evidence behind him had burned. "Shipment ready?" he asked Morrow through the open door. "Ready for inspection," Morrow said. "Authorization?" Calder handed over a folded paper. Morrow kept his expression flat. "This is the copy already filed, then release the draft. The cattle must be inspected first." Calder glanced toward Pen 6 and saw Silas. His step stopped. The drover saw Tate near the far rail. Neither man ran. The drover moved first, not toward the road but toward the side gate of Pen 6. He pulled the pin and swung the gate wide, trying to spill the yearlings into the larger stockyard where joined brands would vanish among hundreds of cattle. Silas crossed the lane before the first animal cleared the opening. He drove the gate back with his shoulder and held it against the pressure of the herd. "Close the rail-side barrier," Etta called. Morrow seized the lever beside the loading track. The heavy barrier dropped across the exit. The drover lunged for a second latch. Tate intercepted him, caught his coat, and brought him against the fence without drawing a weapon. Calder turned toward the office. Etta reached the yard alarm rope and pulled. The bell clanged above the pens. Workers emerged from the loading platform and blocked the remaining passage. Calder tore the authorization from Morrow's hand before anyone reached him. He ripped it once across the middle and struck a match against the office doorframe. Wind killed the flame. The second match caught. Fire crawled along one corner of the paper. Tate released the drover to a yardman and moved toward Calder, but Etta reached the water bucket beside the stove first. She threw the water low, soaking Calder's sleeve and the burning paper. The flame died before reaching the signature. Calder dropped the pieces. Morrow covered them with a clean blotter and lifted them onto the desk. "Signature is still legible," he said. Tate took Calder by the arm. "You will answer before the county for the cattle, the forged order, and trying to burn it." "On her word?" Calder demanded. "On the register, the brand, the papers, and what I just watched you do." The yardmen searched the drover. They found an arrival slip bearing the intermediary name C, Vale Freight, and a payment stub for driving 18 head from the south road. Tate searched Calder before witnesses. From Calder's inside coat pocket came a bank draft, payable after shipment inspection. From another pocket came the torn lower half of the order. Last came a blackened brass key, Silas recognized it before Tate set it on the desk. My father's foreman key. Calder's face changed, not fear now. Exposure. Tate read the bank draft. This payment is marked toward a final installment. Morrow leaned close. Land tract south of Pueblo. Small parcel near the irrigation ditch. Calder said nothing. Etta understood the motive without needing a confession. 17 years of wages had not satisfied him because he had mistaken access for ownership. He had used Juniper Draw cattle to purchase the ground he believed service had earned him. You were building your own place, she said. Calder's mouth twisted. I built Whitcomb's first. You worked there, Silas said. That was not permission to steal it piece by piece. The yearling settled inside Pen 6. Tate ordered the drover, and Calder held separately until the justice of the peace could be notified. He also posted 2 yard men at Pen 6 and ordered that no animal move until its brand, age group, and condition had been entered under witness in the register. Morrow sealed the torn authorization, bank draft, old key, and arrival slip. Etta asked for telegraph paper. The earlier shipment may have reached another agent under the same intermediary. Morrow brought a form. She wrote a concise message to the destination office named in the April register, directing the agent to retain payment records tied to receipt 417, Calder Voss, and C. Vale Freight, and not to release any remaining funds. Tate read it, signed beneath her instruction, and sent Morrow to the telegraph office. Only after the message left did the force holding Silas upright give way. He crossed to Etta and pulled her into an embrace. Her body stiffened from surprise. At once his arms loosened. He began to step back. Etta caught the front of his coat and drew him in again. This time the embrace belonged to both of them. His hands settled at her back without tightening. Her cheek rested against his chest long enough to hear his breathing slow. He did not kiss her. He did not turn relief into a claim. You found the road they used, he said. We found it. You saw the handwriting. Because you wrote to me. He eased away only when she released his coat. Across the yard, Calder watched from beside Tate. At the hearing, he said, they will see the woman who lied before they see your numbers. Etta faced him. Then they will also see that I told the truth before you ever thought to use it against me. Calder kept his promise 2 mornings later. He did not begin with the cattle. He began with Etta. The preliminary examination was held in a narrow room above a Pueblo mercantile, where the justice of the peace kept a desk, a stove, and 3 benches for matters too serious to settle in the street, but not yet ready for a county trial. October 22 had dawned clear and bitter. Etta sat beside Deputy Sheriff Owen Tate with the red cattle ledger closed before her. Silas occupied the bench behind, close enough to hear, far enough not to speak for her. Calder stood with the drover and a hired advocate whose first question had nothing to do with receipt 417. Miss Braddock, did you travel to Colorado after Mr. Whitcomb had been shown another woman's likeness? Yes. Did you accept fare sent under that belief? Yes. Did you continue writing after the picture was sent? Yes. The advocate turned toward the justice. Then the court should understand that this entire accusation comes from a woman who obtained money through deception. Etta kept both hands on the ledger. The fare was sent to the writer. The picture was false. I confessed before my trunk left Redwater's street. No marriage took place. No property changed hands. Those facts are all true. Conveniently admitted after you arrived. Not conveniently. Publicly. A faint stir crossed the benches. The justice lifted one finger and it stopped. What does your false picture have to do with Mr. Voss's freight records? Etta asked. The advocate's mouth tightened. It concerns whether your word can be trusted. Then do not trust my word. Trust 3 records kept by 3 separate hands. She opened the red ledger. Juniper Draw's book says 18 yearlings died after an April storm. She placed an attested copy of Henry Morrow's register beside it. Pueblo's freight register says 18 live head-bearing. The joined J.D. brand were shipped on April 28 under an intermediary account handled by Calder Voss. Last, she set down the witnessed Pen 6 count. And on October 20, 18, live joined J.D. yearlings were found in Pen 6 beneath an authorization carrying a forged Silas Whitcomb signature. The advocate leaned forward. You expect one repeated number to prove theft? No, I expect the brand dates, entries, missing deposits, false death totals, forged order, and Mr. Voss's possession of an old office key to prove that the number was not chance. Henry Morrow took the witness chair. He identified the bound freight register, the attested copy made in Tate's presence, the arrival slip signed by the South Road drover, and the intermediary account marked C. Vale Freight. He explained that receipt numbers were assigned in sequence and that 417 belonged to April 28. Tate then opened his evidence case. He presented each item without dramatics. The burned fragment, bearing 417, part of Calder's signature, and the lower curve of the tear-shaped ink blot, the empty envelope bearing Silas's broken wax initials and Etta's pencil cross, the torn shipping, authorization with the forged signature still legible, the bank draft tied to a land installment south of Pueblo, and the blackened foreman key. "Where did you find the envelope?" the advocate asked. "Inside Miss Braddock's locked travel trunk at Juniper Draw," Tate said. "I observed it in place. Neither Miss Braddock nor Mr. Whitcomb touched it before I sealed it. And the burned paper? In the office stove the same morning. I removed and sealed it myself." "You cannot prove Mr. Voss placed either there. Not from those objects alone." Tate did not reach beyond his proof. "The old key opened the office without damage. It was found in Mr. Voss's coat after I watched him tear and attempt to burn the current authorization." Silas testified next. He confirmed that Juniper Draw had never authorized either shipment, that the cattle in Pen 6 carried his ranch brand, and that the forged signature used a closed W, unlike his own. He did not say Etta was honorable. He did not ask the justice to believe her because he did. When the advocate asked whether Silas had developed a personal attachment to his bookkeeper, the justice stopped the question. "Ownership, authorization, access, and handwriting. Keep to those." A telegraph reply arrived before noon. Morrow read it aloud. The destination agent had retained records showing that 2 earlier payments tied to C. Vale Freight had been directed through the same intermediary account. One draft had already cleared. Another remained traceable. Calder's advocate objected that no final bank witness stood in the room. The justice agreed the telegram was not final proof of every payment, but allowed it as reason to continue the inquiry and preserve the records. Calder had remained still through the documents. The bank draft broke him. "That tract was mine," he said. His advocate seized his sleeve. "Too late." Calder looked at Silas. "I held Juniper Draw together while your father weakened. 17 years. I taught you half of what keeps a ranch alive. You were paid and trusted," Silas said. "You were not given ownership. Your father would have given me a share. He did not. Then I took what I earned." Etta answered before the anger in Silas could. "Wages pay for service. Trust grants access. Neither becomes a deed because a man resents the boundary." Calder turned on her. "And what did you earn with another woman's face?" "The right to answer for what I did, not the right to take what belonged to someone else." The justice ordered Calder and the drover held for further county proceedings. He did not pronounce a final sentence. He directed Tate to preserve the evidence, Morrow to retain the original freight register, and the bank and destination office to hold all connected records. No one applauded. Etta preferred it that way. Facts did not need celebration to remain facts. By October 24, the red ledger had been copied under witness, and Tate arranged for the original to be returned to Juniper Draw after the county clerk kept attested extracts. Silas asked Etta to meet him in a small side office near the freight yard. He placed a folded wage statement on the desk. 6 weeks' wages, he said. Paid in full. The term is not finished. Your work is. Those are different. Then call the balance a contract payment through the full term. Beneath it lay a second amount. And this? Compensation for covering the cattle and protecting the records written as such. Not a gift. Etta counted every dollar. Silas waited. "The figures are correct," she said. "I hoped they would be. You usually do. I have learned hope is not a record." The faint humor left him. Choosing to help after I returned the key did not make what I did less wrong. "No, I still want you at Juniper Draw, as bookkeeper, as the person who stops me when anger outruns proof, and as more than either of those." Etta's breath caught, but she did not rescue him from the next words. "I will not use the ranch, your wages, or the danger to hold you there," he said. "I want you, but that is not a proposal." "What is it?" "The truth before I ask anything of you." He stepped closer, then stopped. "May I kiss you?" "Yes." Etta caught the front of his coat and drew him down. His mouth met hers with none of the restraint that had made their first kiss brief, yet every movement still waited for her answer. She leaned into him. Only then did his hands settle at her waist. The kiss deepened, warm and urgent, without taking more than she gave. When they separated, his forehead rested near hers. "I want you," he said again. "I heard you." He did not ask whether the kiss meant forgiveness. That absence mattered more than a request would have. Etta released his coat, but kept one hand on the desk until her breathing steadied. "You cannot repair what happened by becoming perfect for one afternoon," she said. "I know. At Juniper Draw you will be afraid again. Yes, and angry, certainly. Then what changes?" Silas glanced at the key in her reticule. "I ask. If you say no, I listen before I act. If danger leaves no time, I explain the choice afterward and accept that you may judge it wrong. That is not a guarantee. No honest man can guarantee he will never fail you. I can promise not to make failure your duty to forgive." Etta felt the answer settle where charm could not reach. It offered no safety, only accountability. "And the work?" "Yours if you want it. Same wages until we write new terms. Same room, same key. If you leave, I carry your trunk wherever you name." He was giving back not only the road, but everything required to take it. Silas crossed to the desk and placed a paid rail ticket beside her wages. "Pueblo to St. Joseph, eastbound. Choose only after you know you can go." Etta looked at the money she had earned, the ticket that could carry her away, and the man who had finally learned that an open door meant nothing unless she decided which direction to take. Edit. The ticket remained folded beside Etta's wages all the way back to Juniper Draw. She did not put it away. She left it on the corner of the office desk where morning light could reach it. Beside the copied loss entries and the new shipment form she had begun drafting in 2 columns. One signature would no longer move cattle from the ranch. 2 would be required. On October 25, Deputy Sheriff Owen Tate arrived with the original red cattle ledger wrapped in brown paper. The county clerk had retained attested extracts, the burned fragment of receipt 417, the empty envelope, the forged order, the old foreman key, and Calder's bank draft remained in official custody. Nothing destroyed had returned whole. Nothing needed to. "This belongs back with the ranch," Tate said, setting the ledger before Etta, rather than Silas. "The county has what it needs for the next proceeding." Etta unwrapped the book. Calder's altered death totals still crossed the page in brown ink. She did not erase them. "They stay visible," she said. Silas stood across the desk. "Agreed." Over the next 6 days, Etta closed the temporary accounts, marked every unresolved loss, and rebuilt the shipment record from the first entry forward. She wrote a rule across the top of the new form. No cattle leave Juniper Draw without 2 witnessed counts and 2 signatures. Silas signed beneath it. Boyd did too after reading the line twice. "Means a man cannot move stock alone," he said. "It means no one should have to trust one man's memory more than the ranch's record," Etta replied. Silas did not take offense. That mattered more now than agreement spoken under pressure. He repaired the old cash box himself, leaving the pry scars visible. Beneath the desk, he installed a second iron box with 2 locks. He kept one key. The other he placed in Etta's palm and did not close her fingers around it. "Yours if you stay," he said. "Yours if you leave. It opens the record box, not a promise." Etta hung it beside the brass office key. Each day he brought her coffee before dawn and left without asking whether the ticket had moved. Each evening he checked the south gate with another man, never alone. He had learned that accountability was not a speech. It was repetition. On the morning of November 1, Etta packed the worn valise. The blue thread packet went inside beneath her folded cloak. Lila's tintype and the small travel trunk remained with Agnes in Redwater. Etta carried the valise to the buckboard before sunrise. Silas came from the barn leading the bays. He saw the luggage and stopped. "Pueblo?" he asked. "Redwater first." His face did not close, but she watched him prepare to accept the answer. "I'll drive you. You do not have to." "No, I want to. If you would rather Boyd take you, say so." Etta held out the ticket. Silas did not reach for it. "I came here beneath another woman's face," she said. "That will always be part of the truth." "Yes. And I am not the woman you expected to meet." "No." The answer was honest. He stepped closer, leaving the ticket between them. "The woman I expected had Lila's face in your mind. She never existed." Etta's throat tightened. Silas continued before she could mistake the words for rejection. "The woman who came told me the truth before I could offer her safety. She found what I had failed to see in my own books. She stopped me when anger would have ruined the evidence. She left when I used fear as authority. Then she returned only after I gave the choice back." His voice lowered. "I knew your mind before I knew your face. I trust your judgment because you made me earn the right to stand beside it. You are my partner, my home, and the person whose absence I feel before the door closes." He looked at the ticket, then at her. "You are my everything." The words did not ask her to become smaller. They named what he had learned to value. "I love you, Etta." She had imagined hearing love as rescue. This was not rescue, it was exposure. He had placed the truth in her hands with the same freedom as the ticket. "Before you ask me anything," she said, "I need you to know what I would require. Tell me. My bookkeeping remains paid. Work. Yes, my wages and savings remain mine. Yes. My name goes on shipment authorizations. Yes. 2 signatures. Yours cannot replace mine, and mine cannot replace yours. Agreed. If we disagree about a shipment, it stops until the figures are checked. Agreed. And if you are afraid for me, you ask what I intend before you decide what I am permitted to do." Silas took that one, without haste. "Yes, living it will be harder than saying it. That is why I am saying it now. Then we write every term." Etta tore the rail ticket once, then again. The pieces fluttered against her glove. Silas's breath left him, but he did not reach for her. "That is not an answer to a question you have not asked," she said. A brief, startled smile touched his mouth. He removed his hat. "Etta Braddock, will you marry me? If I say no, do the work, wages, and keys remain?" "Yes, if I decide later to leave." Pain crossed his face, but he did not hide from the answer. "I take you wherever you choose." Etta placed the torn ticket in his hand. "Then yes." Silas set the pieces on the wagon seat as though even her discarded road deserved care. He opened his arms but waited. Etta stepped into them. The embrace held no urgency, only the weight of 2 people who knew what refusal cost and what consent restored. His hand settled at the middle of her back. Hers closed around his coat. He kissed her hair, then stopped there. Before they left for Redwater, Etta carried the ticket pieces into the office. The stove held only cold ash from the morning. She laid the scraps on the grate and struck the match herself. Silas stood by the door, neither mourning the road nor celebrating its destruction. "You could have kept it," he said. "I know. The flame-curled Pueblo, St. Joseph, and the printed fare into black edges." "I am not staying because the road closed," she said. "I am staying because it remained open." He nodded. "Then I will spend the rest of my life remembering the difference." The new agreement was written before noon. Etta's name stood beside Silas's on every shipment line. Her wages were entered as expense, not allowance. Her savings remained in her own account. Agnes witnessed the signatures when they drove to Redwater that afternoon. Agnes also brought the trunk key in a separate envelope. "Because property," she said, "should arrive with its ownership plainly attached." Etta thanked her and kept the key herself under her name. She read the terms before saying, "Better than flowers, harder to keep." "That appears to be the point," Etta said. The wedding took place on November 3 beneath the cottonwoods near the ranch house. No crowd gathered to approve what Redwater had once judged. Agnes came with Etta's small travel trunk and a dark blue dress Etta had bought with her own wages. Tate stood beside Boyd and 3 ranch hands. A minister from Redwater spoke the vows without ornament. Silas wore a black coat. Etta wore no borrowed curls and no painted softness. When asked whether she came freely, she said yes before anyone could breathe for her. Silas's answer followed, steady and plain. After the vows, he waited. Etta placed one hand against his cheek, drew him down and kissed him. The men removed their hats. Agnes smiled without crying. No applause was needed. That evening, Etta unpacked the small travel trunk in the room that was now theirs by choice rather than assumption. She placed the blue thread packet in the upper drawer of the shared office desk. The old red ledger went on the shelf beside the new one, its false entries preserved as warning rather than shame. Leela's tintype remained on the desk long enough for Etta to write the accompanying letter. She did not accuse Leela of causing everything. She named what Leela had done, what Etta herself had allowed, and what would be required before trust could be considered again. Then she wrapped the tintype and addressed it to Missouri. Silas entered carrying the repaired cash box. "Do you want me to post that?" "Yes." "Read it?" "No." He accepted both answers. Etta placed her key in one lock of the new box. Silas placed his in the other. Neither could open it alone. Outside, the recovered yearlings shifted beyond the corral. Inside, the letters that had once borrowed another woman's face rested beneath Etta's own name. By April of 1887, Juniper Draw had learned to distrust any number that arrived without a second hand beside it. Boyd came into the office after breakfast with dust on his boots, an account of 72 yearlings in the east pasture. Etta looked from his tally to Silas's morning slate. "He has 73. Boyd scratched behind one ear, then one of us counted a fence post. Silas leaned against the desk. "Recount them." "Which one of us?" Boyd asked. "Both," Etta said. And this time, no talking about the school teacher while cattle passed the gate. Boyd's face reddened. Silas's did not. That was one question. It lasted through 3 steers. Boyd left muttering that figures had become less forgiving since Miss Braddock took command of them. Silas waited until the door closed, then bent and kissed Etta's temple. She caught his wrist before he could retreat. That was affectionate evasion. Was it successful? No. She pulled him lower and kissed him properly. His hand settled at her waist only after she leaned into him, and the smile he carried when she released him had nothing guarded in it. Marriage had not made him less restrained. It had made restraint easier to read. The office had changed without becoming grand. The scarred desk remained beneath the window. The old red cattle ledger stood on the shelf, its false death entries visible between the covers. Beside it rested the new ledger, less tidy and more honest, with Silas's morning counts, Etta's verified shipment figures, Boyd's witness initials, and every correction dated. Beneath the desk sat the repaired cash box with its pry scars left plain. Next to it stood the newer iron box with 2 locks. Silas carried one key. Etta carried the other. Neither could open it alone. The county clerk had also returned a written inventory of every item retained. The charred receipt fragment, the torn authorization, the old foreman key, the empty envelope, and the bank draft. Etta kept the inventory in the new iron box, not because she expected Calder to return, but because memory became safer when it had a place. Silas never opened the box without her key. She never asked him to prove he trusted her by surrendering his. The arrangement required both of them, which was the point. Their disagreements had not ended with the wedding. Once, Silas wanted to ship before a cold front. Etta stopped the order because the buyer's figures were wrong. Another time, she wanted to delay repairs, and Silas showed her the beam that would not survive another heavy snow. They checked. One yielded. Neither called obedience love. When proof answered, Juniper Draw had recovered the 18 yearlings from Pen 6 and part of the money traced through Sea Vale freight. One buyer had vanished west before the county reached him. Another had failed with debts greater than his stock. The ranch would never recover every dollar Calder had taken. Silas sold no false promise of easy repair. They replaced fencing one section at a time, delayed work on the barn roof, and hired only when wages could be paid without borrowing against cattle still on the range. Calder had been carried forward through the county proceedings and was serving the consequence imposed there. The drover had answered separately for his part. Etta did not need the length of either punishment repeated over breakfast. Justice mattered because the theft had been named, the cattle restored where possible, and the system that allowed it had been dismantled. Receipt 417 remained only as a burned fragment in official custody. Its number survived in Henry Morrow's register, the county extracts, and Etta's copied index. Nothing destroyed had returned whole. Enough had survived. A letter from Missouri lay open on the desk. Lila had signed it in a hand Etta knew from birthday cards and household labels. She admitted that she had enjoyed letting her face answer Etta's words. She admitted that she had liked being imagined courageous without ever boarding the train. When the lie collapsed, she had left Etta to carry the disgrace alone. She did not ask forgiveness as though apology purchased it. Etta folded the letter and placed it in a separate file, not with the blue thread packet. "Will you answer?" Silas asked. "Not yet." He nodded. Her mother had written twice. Etta had answered once. Married, working, safe. She offered no apology for distance. A boundary did not become cruelty because someone disliked standing outside it. Above the desk hung a new tintype taken in Pueblo during a supply trip. Etta wore a practical dark dress with a narrow white collar. No borrowed curls softened her temples. No painted light widened her eyes. The photographer had suggested retouching the plate. Etta said no. Silas had waited for her answer before giving his own. Their faces were not perfect, but they belonged to the people beneath them. The first spring calf had been born 2 nights earlier, beneath a cold, star-bright sky. Etta had recorded the hour, the dam's brand, and Boyd's witness mark, while Silas held the lantern. It was a small event in ranch terms. Still, the entry pleased her. A living thing had arrived, and no one needed to make the record prettier than the truth. Silas moved to the window. Worry still sent him along the south fence when the books ran thin, or a storm gathered over the mountains. Etta had learned that he counted posts when troubled. At 41, she usually joined him. At 50, he would finally admit what occupied his mind. Then he asked what should be sold, delayed, repaired, or risked. Juniper Draw had become hers that way, not through one vow or one key, through decisions that expected her answer. Hooves sounded beyond the office. Boyd and a ranch hand drove the East Pasture yearlings through the gate. Etta opened the new ledger and marked each group. Silas counted from the window. 70, 71, 72. The final yearling hesitated behind the others, then broke through with its tail high. 73, Etta said. Boyd removed his hat. Mr. Whitcomb was right. Silas turned from the window. Miss Braddock was right, too. Boyd's glance flicked toward Etta, then to the ledger where her name stood beside Silas's. Yes, sir, she was. After he left, Etta closed the book halfway. You realize I am also Mrs. Whitcomb. I have been informed, repeatedly. Miss Braddock was the woman who found the missing cattle. And Mrs. Whitcomb? Silas came around the desk. She married a man who requires frequent correction, a demanding occupation. Paid work, always. He rested one hand beside the ledger, waiting until she offered hers. The blue thread packet remained intact in the upper drawer beneath them. Sometimes they read the letters aloud, including the arguments. Especially the arguments. Silas had once believed that love meant shielding what he feared losing. Etta had taught him that love without choice was only a softer form of control. She had once believed a face could cancel the worth of every thought behind it. He had not healed that wound by choosing her. She had begun healing it when she stepped down from the stage and told the truth before anyone could grant or deny her value. Silas glanced at the unretouched tintype. I believe the first picture showed the prettier woman. Etta raised one eyebrow. That sounds dangerous. It was foolish. Better. He touched the edge of the new ledger. The woman in that picture never wrote a word worth keeping. Beyond the corral, the recovered yearlings settled into the spring grass. Evening light gathered in the ranch windows. Etta opened her hand across the desk. Silas placed his in it. Between them waited the new ledger, 2 distinct hands filling the same honest page.